Hey everyone, Bill Maloney with Tech Support Training for ForcePoint. Thank you very much for joining the 8.3 V-Series CLI Basics Demonstration. Format for this will be, I'll spend probably the first 5, maybe 10 minutes on a PowerPoint just to give you an introduction to the new CLI that's in version 8.3. And then the next hour will be demonstration of command line commands for the new CLIs. I'm going to use a document to start off, and I want to point out where that's located. On our support.forcepoint.com site, there's the documentation section. And if you go to, as a matter of fact, let me go to documentation and show you the route here. Go to All Documents tab, and then scroll down and find the appliances. And then I use the V10K appliance 8.3. Basically anywhere that you see 8.3, you can click. And you see the documentation for the 8.3 appliances. Down in the bottom, there's documents regarding the CLI. There's the Appliances CLI Guide. And the one I'm going to use is this V-Series Visual Primer for CLI 8.3. What it does is it takes screenshots of the graphical user interface used in previous versions and relates the commands available in 8.3 to those screens so that you can say, oh, I used to go to this screen and do this. What command do I need to use to do that? And it's right on the page. And I'll show you that in a moment. All right, so let's take a look at that document. Again, it's the Visual Primer for version 8.3 CLI. For 8.3, we've moved from a graphical user interface to a command line interface for administrating the V-Series appliances and X-Series for that matter as well. It's a common CLI, so whether you have V-Series or X-Series or both, you only have to learn one set of commands. We've done away with the admin console, but sometime in this year, we will come out with what we're currently calling a Centralized Appliance Manager graphical user interface. That the main benefit of will allow you to manage all of your appliances from one login. So you log into the Centralized Appliance Manager once, and as the name implies, you can centrally manage all your appliances from that one graphical user interface. That doesn't mean the command line is going to go away. I'm sure there'll be a lot of people who write scripts and use the command line to automate a lot of what they do on their appliances. The command line is here to stay through all future versions. So it's good that you're in this session to get a feeling for some basics for that command line. This is the outline of how this PowerPoint works, or this presentation works. I'm going to show you that in a moment. So let's start off and talk about the command line interface. It is truly a command line interface. There's really no access to the file system, and I'll demo that a little bit later on. You can use PuTTY or any tool, SSH tool, to access that command line. You can, of course, attach a keyboard or monitor. You can do the serial port connection, or you can use the iDRAC connection. All will access the 8.3 CLI. If you try to get to the old Appliance Manager GUI by using the 9447 port, you'll get a new page. The old page would show you a link to Appliance Manager that you could click to get to Appliance Manager, and one for Content Gateway. The new one over on the left here will explain that you need to access the CLI from SSH or some other tool, but there is still a link down at the bottom for Content Gateway Manager, so you can still get there using that 9447 port. There's help, of course, within the CLI. You can use help for any of the commands. You can also use a question mark after the command, which is what I prefer, because if you type in the question mark and hit enter, it will show you the help and then retype anything that you've typed so far. You can use the tab key to autocomplete commands or parameters for commands, and of course, up arrow and down arrow will display previous and next command. There are 3 modes to the CLI. When you first log into the CLI, you land in view mode, and as that name would imply, all you can run there are commands that will allow you to view the configuration of the appliance or the status of the appliance. You can then switch to config mode by typing config and entering the password for admin again. Config mode allows you to configure the appliance and execute all the show commands that are available in the view mode. And then diagnose mode, I like to liken it to the command line utility. This in the older graphical user interface. It's where you run your Linux commands, ping, Tcp dump, etc. and I'll demo some of that near the end of this presentation as well. As I said, you drop into view mode when you first log in. To switch to config, you type config and re-enter the admin password. To get to diagnose mode, you cannot get there directly from config. You have to use the exit command to exit back to view mode, and then type diagnose to get into diagnose mode. Same concept, trying to go from diagnose to config, you must drop back to view mode before you can get to config mode. There are ways to bump other admins. Why would you ever want to bump another admin? Only one admin can be logged into config mode at a time. I'll demonstrate this in a minute, but if John gets into config mode, does some configuration, then forgets to log out, goes to lunch, I log in, I want to get into config mode, there's a clear session command that I can use to clear John's config session. You can reset the password, of course, for the CLI. The command is set account admin -- password. It will ask you a new password twice. There are rules, pretty much the same as you would have for the previous admin passwords. So if you forget the password for admin, you can reset it by logging into the CLI via an iDRAC or via direct keyboard and mouse. That will give you the option to hit Control-P to reset your password. If you set up all the SMT configurations and included your email address, it will send you a temporary password that you can use to log in as admin and reset the password. If you do not have the SMTP information set up within the appliance, it will give you a passcode that you can then call into ForcePoint support and get that passcode turned into a temporary password. So as I said, the rest of this document relates the commands that are in the 8.3 CLI to screen captures from the old graphical user interface. So if I just page down here a few times, I want to show you. So here's the system page on the right-hand side, and over on the left-hand side are all the commands that replicate what you would have done in the system page in the graphical user interface. If all the commands don't fit on one page, of course, they'll continue to the next page. Here's the network interfaces for IPv4 and the commands for IPv4, as well as parameters that are available for it. So this is a handy little document. I highly recommend that you visit support.forcepoint.com and download this document until you get completely familiar with these commands. So enough of PowerPoint. Let's get on with demonstrations here. First off, I'm going to pause and see if there are any questions on the information that I've covered. In the meantime, I'm going to pick one of my appliances here and SSH into it. All right, I don't see any comments or questions, so far so good. Much like you'd log into the old graphical user interface to administrate the appliance, here you'll log in as admin as well, and then the password, whatever password you set during first boot. And as I mentioned earlier, you drop right into view mode, and the prompt will tell you what mode that you're in. You're also provided a certain amount of basic information about the appliance that you've logged into. At this point, common commands would be show appliance info to get more info about the appliance. You can see this one's been up for a little less than a day. The host name, hardware platform, it's 8.3. It's AP web mode, and user directory and filtering, what used to be known as light. Then I'll hit the up arrow and overstrike info with status, and let's get a status of the running components on this appliance. So we can see that network agent is installed and running, web is installed and all the services are running, proxy is installed and all the services are running except the analytics server is stopped. And we'll talk about stopping and starting services in a little bit later on. There's no CLS or CLEAR screen, so you're going to have to keep your eyes on the bottom of my window here to see the commands that I'm typing in. We've requested that from product management, and hopefully it'll be added in a next version. But right now there is no CLS or clear command. So I'm in view mode, and I want to get to config mode. So I'm going to type CONFIG and hit enter. And it will ask me to repeat the password for admin, and that will put me in config mode. Then I can do a show session, and it will show that I'm the only one logged into this appliance right now and that I'm in config mode. Just as demonstration here, I'll open up a duplicate session and log in again as admin, which is perfectly valid. And I'll tell you why you might want to do that a little bit later on. Let me separate these a little bit. And I'm in view mode here. If I type config and hit enter, it's not going to let me in. It's going to tell me that config mode is in use by another admin. Please try again later. And if I do a show session, we can see that two people are logged in as admin. One's in view and one's in config. I want to get John out of config because he's gone to lunch and I need to use config. So I can do the clear session command. And there's only one parameter, --config, and you'll notice that I typed it in there pretty quickly. And the reason I typed it so quickly is because I didn't type it, I just hit the tab. I've become accustomed, very accustomed to using the tab key for almost everything I do in the command line. It will complete parameters, it will complete commands, it will show you, if you hit the tab key twice, what parameters are available or what you need to enter next. So that's what I use to fill in that --config there. If I hit enter, and let me again rearrange this a little bit so you can see the prompt. If I hit enter here, you'll see that John's session in the background there switched from config to view mode. I've kicked him off of config mode, and now I can enter config mode here, and away we go. Don't know how often that will happen in your environment, may or may not, but I think that's kind of handy. The other reason I want to emphasize for opening up multiple windows or two sessions and logging in as admin twice is that you can keep one in config mode and keep the other one in diagnose mode, and that way you don't have to do what I call the exit dance. You don't have to exit back to view mode, type diagnose, get into diagnose mode, run some diagnose commands, see whether they work or not. Oh wait, didn't work, I need to make a config change, exit back to view, then switch into config. This way I can switch back and forth right between windows. I find that a handy little method of avoiding having to type a lot of exits. One of the primary things most everyone will need to do when they first install or upgrade to 8.3 is set up a file store. As I said before, it's a command line interface. It is not a shell, and so it does not understand any shell type commands like trying to switch to the root or finding out what directory I'm currently working in. The only commands that are available are the 195 commands that we've created. So you can't save files, you can't manipulate files here. So in order to save, for instance, a config summary or log files or a TCP dump, you're going to need to create a file store. Type show file store here, and you can see that I don't have any set up right now. I'm in config mode, so I can do a set command. I'm going to do set file store. As I said, I'm going to use the tab key and just hit it a couple times and see what I need to fill in. And you'll notice it underneath the command, it fills in all the parameters that I can supply and repeats what I've typed so far. So the first thing I have to do for a file store is give it an alias. So I'm going to call this one share2. Then I need to specify the host that it's on, and that has to be by IP address. And this is a Windows server that's also in my environment. You can actually see it in the background there that I've already created a share on. Then I need to specify the path of that share on the Windows box. Path is just called share. That's the name I shared the directory as. If I wanted to go further into that directory, wanted to go further down the tree, if you will, I could do dir1, dir2. You get the idea. In this case, I'm just going to put it right in that directory that I shared. Port's optional. I definitely have to specify what type of share this is. In this case, it's a Samba share because this is a Windows box. And then I have to specify a username that has access to that share, user administrator. So give it a name, an alias. Specify the IP address of the server that it's on, the path to that directory, the type, in this case Samba, and an administrator or user ID. Right now, file stores only support FTP, TFTP, and Samba shares. There may be more in the future, but that's what's supported right now. So I'm going to hit enter here, and it will ask me for the password for administrator. And you'll note that it says file store share to created. And I'll use the up arrow and repeat my show file store, and there it is. Once you've got a file store created, you can then use save log commands, save config summary, TCP dump, and write it out to a file and put it in this directory. I will pause here and see if there are any questions about this. And while I'm waiting for questions, I'll point out one other thing. In order for that to have worked, that file store to have worked, I would have already had to share this subdirectory called share. By right-clicking on it, choose share with specific people. You can put in an individual ID and give it read-write, or you can type in the Windows everyone and give it read-write. Either way, once you've done that, you click on share, and that directory is shared. Once you've shared that directory, then you can point a file store to it. Question, will you show how they can tell which parameters are optional, the help function? Oh yeah, absolutely. So if I do that set file store, my favorite way to get to the help system is to use a question mark at this point, because all I have to do is type question mark. Oh, I'm in diagnose mode here. Sorry, I grabbed the wrong window. That's the downside of having two windows open. So set file store, the minute I type a question mark there, it types out all the help information. And within the help information, if something is optional, it will show you that it's optional. The other way of doing that is to just type help set file store or whatever command you're interested in, and you'll get the same information. I've become accustomed to using a question mark because, again, it will retype everything that you have typed to that point when you type in the question mark. So I'm ready to go and fill in my parameters. So question mark or help, either one will get you the help information. I don't see any other questions come in, so I'm going to continue here. Next thing I'm going to do is save a config summary, and it's exactly that command. Again, use the tab key, type in CON or CONF and hit tab and let it fill it in for you. The tab key will again tell me that there's one parameter. If it fills it in completely, if it doesn't just put a dash there, there's only one parameter. And that is what is the name of my file store that I want to put it in. And in this case, it's share2. And I'm going to hit enter. And this will take about 2 or 3 minutes. So I'm going to switch back to my other window and exit out of diagnose mode, back into view mode, and do a few log commands as well, because log files are things that you want to save to a file store as well. I can do a show log type list to find out what types of logs are available for each one of the modules. And I can specify all modules or just the appliance itself, which is APP. So ALL or APP. I'm going to do ALL, and it will show me that the log type for web is web, the log type for the appliance is audit and system, network agent and proxy, you can see. This is a known bug in our help system, and we will fix it. Actually, the log types for web, network agent, and proxy are called module. When you are using the log commands, whether you're showing or saving, and it asks you for a log type for web, the type is going to be module, and that's the only type that's available for web or network agent or proxy. Audit and system are indeed the two types of logs that are available for the appliance. The audit log will show you who's logged in and out of the appliance, the system log, what most of us are familiar as messages. So I'm going to jump for a second here and show you that my saved config summary has finished. It's put this file into my share directory, and if I switch back here and open up my share directory, you can see that my config summary is now saved to my share on the Windows box. All right, let's continue with logs. We can do show log last line. So I want to see the last X number of lines that are available in a particular log. Again, I'm going to use the tab key twice to see what I have to fill in. Number of lines is definitely what I have to fill in. So let's say I want to see the last 10 lines. What module do I want to see it from? Let's say I want to see, at first let's do appliance. So I'm going to do APP and then type. And I'm going to hit the tab key and fill in type. And again, I'm going to hit the tab key twice and show you that for the appliance module, it will show audit module, and system, but audit and system are the only ones that are true. So if I want to do the audit log, and I get the last 10 lines of authentication from the audit log for the appliance. Same concept, I can do show log real time. And again, I'm just going to hit the tab key twice here to see what we have to provide. I could provide a filter, i.e. a particular word or phrase that I'm looking for. In this case, I'm just going to do module, and let's do proxy here, and then do timeout. I'll just do 10 seconds of showing the real time from that log output, and then we'll have to do type. And again, I'm going to hit tab twice here and show you that our help system shows you the 3 that are available, but in reality, the only thing you can type in here is module. I hit enter. I don't think there's much going on my proxy right now, so we won't get much from the content gateway out file. But it will take 10 seconds, and then it will come back. If I want to save a log, oops, I'm sorry, I'm in view mode here. I need to get into config mode. Now I'm in. Now I can save log. And the tab key, let's see what we have to do. We have to tell it where we want to save it. In this case, it's my file store that I created called share2. Specify the module that we want to save. So let's do web. And do the type. And again, the only type that's available is module. It tells me that WebSense log has been saved to my Samba share, and there's my WebSense log. So that's how we save a log. Any questions about working with log files? All right. So we talked a little bit about sets, accounts, and in this case we'll do admin. The only option that's available here is the password. That's the command you'd use to reset the password. I hit enter, it'll ask me for the new password, twice of course. This of course assumes that you know the current password for admin and that you can log in and get the config mode. If you have forgotten the password for admin, as I mentioned earlier, you can access the command line via iDRAC or via some other direct access method, and then it will prompt you and tell you you can hit Control-P to reset the password. If you have set up all your SNMP information correctly and a correct email address, it will send you that temporary password. If not, it will give you a passcode that you can use to call into ForcePoint support and get turned into a password. You can also set the proxy password from here. That's set proxy password. And there's a new account that you can use to access the command line. It's known as the audit account, and you can use that audit ID to access just the view mode of command line. So if you have auditors or someone that you only want to be able to access and view the settings of the appliance or view the current status of the appliance, you can use the audit account. Create that audit account, I should say, or enable that audit account, you use a set account audit. And let's see what parameters, use the tab key. You have to do the status first. And I'll hit the tab key, and it starts with an O, so I'm looking for on or off. That's my trick to understand whether they want enable or disable or on or off, is use the tab key and see what the first letter is that it fills in. So now the account audit is enabled, and I can set the password. I first fell into this trap when I first started using command line. I typed the password in here. That's not what it's looking for. You just hit the enter key and it will prompt you for the password. And of course you have to type it twice. Now you have an account that you can log into and only access the view mode and therefore the show commands. There's 2 commands that you set up to recover passwords or receive alerts from the appliance. The first one is set account SMTP. And again, I'll use the tab key to see what parameters I need. Specify a host, which is the machine that has a SMTP server on it. I do not have one of those in my environment, so I'm just going to pretend. And then the ID, user ID, that has access to that SMTP server. And ports 25 is the default. it will give me an error message after I enter the password because I do not actually have SMTP service. The second command is the set account email. And that's just looking for an email address. So wmaloney@forcepoint. With those two set, when you forget the password for admin, the appliance knows what mail server it can use to send that temporary password and what email address to send it to. And then there's a send test email. And if SMTP is configured, it will send a test email. Question about working with accounts. So earlier I said I did a show appliance status to see the status of all the components on this particular appliance. I could do individual components. For instance, I can do show web to just see the running services in the web container. Same for email, network agent, etc. I can do a show system host to see the host name of this machine. And it will show me the host name. I can also use it if I put in a description. Oops, I'm sorry, I'm using the show system there. I need to do set system. And I can fill in a description. And I've got in the habit of putting whatever the description is, whether it's a single word or multiple words, in double quotes. Definitely, if there's a space somewhere in your description, you need to use double quotes. My show again, and it should have my description in there. There are various commands to restart both the appliance and the individual modules within the appliance. There's restart, there's stop, and start. So there's a restart appliance. And of course, in the interest of time, I'm not actually going to execute this, but this command will pop up and ask you, are you sure, and ask you to type in a yes or a Y to confirm that you want to restart the appliance. The same is true of shutdown appliance. It will prompt you. All the other commands, stop and restart for the individual components. For instance, restart web. If I hit enter, it will go out and it will restart that module. It will not confirm. If I type stop web, it will go out and stop web. It will not ask me for a confirmation. So beware of that. The restart appliance and shutdown appliance will ask for confirmation. Anything else that's going to stop a particular module or restart a particular module will not ask for a confirmation. As a matter of fact, let's do stop network agent and just hit enter there, just as a demo. And you can see that network agent is stopped. No confirmation was requested from me. Do my start network agent to start it back up. Questions on start, stop, restart? Next set of commands I'd like to show you are the commands to manage NTP, your time servers. We can start with show system NTP. See that it's off, but it has been on at one time. It has a couple of NTP servers set up. I can then do a set system NTP. Hit the tab key a couple of times, see what parameters are available. You can see both parameters start with an S. That's why it's filled in --S for me when I hit the tab key. I'm going to change the status to on. And I'm going to set the servers. I've got 0 and 1 in there. Let's overstrike that with 2. If you want to do multiple servers, add a comma, no spaces. Now I can retrieve my show system NTP with the up arrow, and we can see that the status is on and that my servers have changed over to 2.pool and 3.pool. If you want to see what time the appliance believes it is, you can do a show system clock. If there's been some sort of interruption in service and you want to synchronize the time, we have a sync system NTP command that will synchronize the time with the NTP servers. think a majority of you will probably do this during first boot, but it's nice to know that you can reconfigure at any time. Questions about NTP? All right, the one everybody's been waiting for. Let's take a look at configuring an interface, P1 in particular, but it would apply, of course, to N or E1, E2 if you've got an email server. First thing, let's do a show interface info and see what's out there to begin with. So I've got my C interface configured, of course, because that was done during first boot. You can see that P1 and P2 are currently disabled. N is enabled, but not configured. So the command to set IPv4 for an interface is set interface IPv4. Again, I'm going to use the tab key, see what's available there. So I have to specify a gateway, an interface, an IP, and a mask. So I have to tell it first what interface I want to set. So the interface I'm going to configure is P1. I have to give it an IP address, which kind of makes sense. 0. Let's see, this is my 220 box, so let's make it 221. A mask. And a gateway. So set interface IPv4. Which interface do you want to set? In my case, P1. Give it an IP, a mask, and a gateway. You'll notice there's no DNS here. That's a separate command that we'll do in a moment. There we go. Let's go up arrow to show interface info, and we'll see that we've got part of our P1 defined now. So there's our C, and here's our P1, IP address, mask. The interface is enabled. You notice there was no command that I had to enable it first before I configured it. Configuring it enables it. My gateway is in here, but there's no DNS information. That's because it's a separate command. Set interface DNS. Let's see what we have to specify here. I have to specify which module I want to set it for. In this case, it's the proxy module for P1. And then I can set up to 3 DNSs that will type in DNS for me. I put in number 1. Space tab DNS2. 1, and I'm just going to leave DNS3 as it is, but I could do 8.8.8 or something of that nature. Enter. That goes pretty quickly. Let's do a show interface info. So we've got the original information for P1, and now it has primary and a secondary DNS. There is a delete interface IPv4, and that's really you only need to use that if you actually want to delete the interface. If I wanted to get rid of P1 completely. If I wanted to just change the IP address for P1, I could use the set interface IPv4, specify P1, and just specify the IP address and hit enter, and it will just change that piece of the configuration for that P1 interface. I would imagine pretty much everyone on the call will do this. Any questions about setting an interface? All right, I don't see anything coming in, so the next topic we'll talk about is configuring SNMP. Let's do show SNMP config. To start off, we can see that it's disabled. Can then do show trap config. See that it's disabled as well. So I'm going to set up SNMP using the set SNMP command, and I'll hit tab here or maybe I'll do a question mark just to be different. And it puts in the help for me, and you can see that I can set the service itself, enable it, disable it. I can set version 1, version 2C, and version 3. I'm going to do version 1, and it asks me for community. Just going to use my last name, no other parameters. Then I need to set the SNMP service to on. Let's do our show SNMP config and see that that's enabled. So I can do my set trap. My question mark, so I can, same concept here. V1, see what parameters we need. So I need a community, of course. IP address of the machine that's running my SEAM or my machine that's going to receive the traps. So I've got a freeware application running on one of my servers that will receive traps. And then ports, and the default port for traps, it's 162. While we're waiting for that, I want to show you one more thing. The way that you configure individual traps on the appliance using the command line is with a file that you save from the appliance to your file store, then edit and make your changes for the parameters that you want to set for your trap. CPU usage, enable it, set the extreme, in this case 90% is the default, and if it's 90% for 1 minute, send a trap. Best to edit this file in something like Notepad++ rather than just plain old Notepad. Notepad++ or some application that will format this will make it a lot easier to read and work with. Move down to free disk space, enable it, set up your extreme. What I really like about this file is they put all the potential values in there as well. You then save this after you've made all your changes and load the changed file back into the appliance to configure all of those traps at once. Looks like my trap config has completed, so I need to do trap service and set its status to on. And use the up arrow to bring back my show trap. And we can see that our traps are configured. So before I do my test trap, let me go back to my freeware tool here and start a trap collector. And let me maneuver this a little bit so you can see that it shows up in the background. And you can see that my test trap showed back in the trap viewer in the background. As I said before, you do a save trap to save that YML file. Specify the location. You have two choices. If you type in the command and then use the parameter -- default, it will send you a file that has all the default settings for traps as it comes out of the box, if you will. If you leave off the -- default, you will get the trap settings as they are right now if you've previously configured them. And it sends that file out to my share to. Then there's a load trap. Same concept, location, specify your location, and of course a file name. And I'm not going to just reload that previous file, that would be a waste. But that will load your trap settings. Questions about SNMP? All right, while we're waiting for questions, I'm going to go back to our PowerPoint that relates the commands on the left-hand side to the graphical user interface in previous versions and talk about patches and hotfixes. The reason I'm only going to be able to talk about patches and hotfixes is the fact that we don't have any patches or hotfix for 8.3 yet, so I can't demo it. First off, patches. The command is upgrade. So there's show upgrade -list to see a list of available upgrades or a list of available patches from the ForcePoint download servers. History shows you what patches you've already loaded. Status shows you the status of a patch that's currently being downloaded. You start the download by load upgrade, specify the file name that you got by doing the list, and the location is your file store where you want to store it. As this upgrade download progresses, you can show the download, see what the progress is. You can pause the download, you can resume the download, or you can cancel the download. Once the file is downloaded successfully to your file store, you can then install the upgrade. Same concept for hotfixes. Show hotfix list will show you a list of available hotfixes from the download servers. You can specify what module. If you already know the ID for the hotfix you're looking for, you can specify it. Load hotfix will bring that file down to your local file store. As it's downloading, you can see the progress by doing the show download hotfix. Unrelated, but a good command, you can show hotfix history to see what hotfixes you've loaded. As the hotfix is downloading, again, you can pause, resume, and cancel. Once you've got the file, you can install the hotfix. Delete hotfix will actually delete the file from your file store. Uninstall hotfix uninstalls a hotfix. Those two may be hard to keep straight. Delete deletes the file. Uninstall actually uninstalls the hotfix that you previously installed. Questions about patches or hotfixes? All right, let's do a backup. First, I'm going to see if I have any backups created. Show backup list is the command. I have to specify where I've stored them. So I'm going to do my share to file store. And it comes back and says there aren't any there. That's a good thing. Next, I want to create a backup. I can create a backup right now. And oddly enough, the command is create backup now. And it will want to know the description, if you want to supply a description, the location, where do you want to store it. In my case, it's going to be share to. And the type. And for my particular install on this appliance, the only type I have available is full. Maybe web, maybe email, those are the options that are there. In my case, I only have an option to do full. It will take a minute or two. While I'm doing that, you'll notice that my secondary PuTTY session that I'd SSH'd into the appliance has gone away, the one that I was in diagnose mode. After 15 minutes of inactivity, the SSH session to an appliance will close. Duplicate this session, log in as admin. You can also schedule backups. I'm going to do a show backup schedule. We won't have anything right now, but you can specify frequency, etc. The command to do that is create backup schedule. Unfortunately, right now my config, there we go. Okay, so my backup has been created. It's back here in my file share. There's my full backup that was created. I can then create, to automate this, a backup schedule. Question mark, see what we need to supply. So create backup schedule. I can specify a particular date if the frequency is monthly. I can specify a day if the frequency is weekly. Frequency can be daily, weekly, or monthly. Location, of course, I have to specify the file store I want to put it in. When do I want the backup to start is the time, and then the type, as you saw in the create backup now. So I'm going to do my frequency first and make it weekly, and then do the day that I want to do it. And I'm going to hit the tab key twice here to show you. Pretty much everybody knows the abbreviations for days, but I want to show you that it has to be capitalized. It will not work if I type lowercase SAT. It has to be uppercase S. But time after midnight, and I have to type, and it's full. And last but definitely not least, I have to say where I want to store it. My backup schedule is created. Let's go back to the, let's do show backup schedule. And I've set it up as a full backup once a week on Saturdays at 1 minute after midnight, going to my share to. And once this is created, its first scheduled backup, it will then show you the last successful date that the backup was made. Questions about backups? That's pretty much all we're going to do from the config session, unless you guys have some special requests when we're finished up here. I'm going to take this other session and switch it into diagnose mode and take a look at some of the commands for diagnose mode. Most of them are common Linux commands that use parameters instead of what you'd normally do in Linux. For instance, if I did a ping 8.8.8.8, it's not going to understand it here. I have to do a ping and then put in a destination of 8.8.8.8. And if I don't do anything else, it's just going to use the C interface to ping 8.8.8. And then I can also, however, add parameters. You can see I can specify an interface, so ETH0, ETH1, that type of thing, or a module. So if I instead wanted to ping from the proxy module, i.e. through P1, I'd add -- module space proxy. And now that ping will go out that P1 interface. TCP dump, probably a common one. I'll do a question mark here to spell out the entire help. We can supply expressions, much like we would using TCP dump, so -B for verbose, that type of thing, -S0. What I have noticed with this is that you wouldn't do a -S space 0, you just do -S0 after -- expression. Specify a file to save the TCP dump. The interface that you want to run the TCP dump on, it's going to be CP1. You could use ETH0. Location that you want to store the file, timeout. How long do you want the dump to run? Let's do -- timeout, and I'm just going to do one for 10 seconds here in the interest of time. And I'm going to do a file, and we'll call this test.pcap. And a location is my share2 file store. And the interface that I want to do this on, let's do this on P1. I'm not going to add any expression. And in the background, hopefully, about 10 seconds from now, or maybe 12 seconds from now, it says it's saved the test PCAP to my file store share2, and there it is. You can use your favorite application like Wireshark to take a look at that PCAP. You can also run packet captures right on the screen. So I'm going to do for 10 seconds, I'm going to do interface, and let's just do the C interface here. And that will run TCP dump on the screen and scroll on the screen for me. Not a lot going on in my C interface. If it doesn't come back to the prompt in the amount of time you want, you can hit Control-C, of course, and it will bring you back. Let's do a wget, another common one. We have to supply a URL. And I can specify which module I want this to go through, so web, email, network, proxy. So let's send it through proxy, and we'll go out and do a wget. There's also a wget proxy as well to send it if you have a downstream proxy, you want to send it through there. You'll get the traditional feedbacks, your 200 OK, what it downloaded, in this case indexed HTML, and it will remove it for you, not leaving a litter on the drive. And then last but not least, ifconfig. I can hit enter there, and it will show me the configuration for all the interfaces in the appliance, which is sometimes a little bit daunting because it shows all the internal interfaces as well. So I prefer to do a particular interface that I want to see. For instance, INT, and I want to see the interface C, and it will just show me the information for the C interface or for a particular module. So I can specify module, and we'll do proxy. And again, it will show everything for the proxy, including internals, but it's a little bit easier to pick out the ETH0 and ETH1. That is all I had planned to demonstrate for you folks today. Take any questions on any commands, whether I showed them or not, and any requests for demos if you want to see a particular command that you've heard about. Is there a way to access that PowerPoint? Yeah, absolutely. If you go to the support.forcepoint.com website and log in, under the documentation, all documents, scroll down to ForcePoint Appliances, pick any one of the 8.3 links, and down at the very bottom in Configuration and Management, this is V-Series Visual Primer for CLI 8.3. That's the PowerPoint that I was using. It's a great document for people who are just getting used to the CLI. All right, I don't see any new questions coming in. I appreciate you all taking the time and hanging on for the extra 15 minutes. With that, I will end this session. Have a good rest of your day.